Managers of Reddit, what was the worst case of I demand to speak to the manager you've experienced? Obligatory, not a manager, but maybe not the worst, but this was definitely the dumbest I ever saw. A sign was accidentally left up from earlier in the week advertising men's leviers buy one, get one half off, so for 2 pairs, it would be roughly $90. The current sale was to get 2 pairs for $70. Had a lady pitch an absolute fit that they weren't ringing up buy one, get one half off, she was being ripped off, etc. Tried to explain to her that we had accidentally missed a sign, but that she was actually getting a better deal at the current price. She wouldn't have any of it and demanded to speak to the manager. Store leader comes out and tells her the exact same thing, but the lady will not listen and is adamant about getting them at the price on the sign. Store leader finally gives up and tells me to just go ahead and do a price override and charge her the extra money. Lady leaves smugly, like she thinks she's just worked us over big time, and makes some kind of comment about how I need to learn to listen to customers on the way out. TLDR lady spent an extra $20 on jeans because she wanted them for the price on an old sign. I was a shift leader to GameStop and was the manager on duty with one other associate in the store. We were pretty busy. Both the other employee and I were on registers ringing through our own respective lines. Poor guy I work with gets this soccer mom haircut that I knew was gonna be trouble, and she is trying to return a new game that had the seal broken on it. Against return policy, can't help you point. So lady then gets really upset and demands to cancel all of her son's pre-orders. My guy obliges and is preparing to give her her refund in store credit because her son had only paid for the pre-orders with trades. You can't mix match tenders, so my guy informed her so. That was just it. She was instantly screaming and calling my associate a liar. He literally turns the computer screen towards her and shows her the entries in trade credit, but she isn't having it. Let me speak to your manager, dude points to me. I wrap up with my customer and we trade registers so he can keep helping out. I ask her how I can help, to which she screams her experience at me. I reiterate what my buddy informed her and that there isn't any way we can get her cash back. She claims, well, I'm gonna call your corporate office and tell them that your policy doesn't apply to me and I've never been treated like this before. To which I happily offer her the corporate number and advise her that telling a corporate customer service line that they believe they are exempt from policy is probably not the best strategy. Woman gets red in the face and starts looking around the store, and God forbid the poor man, the old manager, walks in. He does not work there anymore, but the woman recognizes him from his time at the store. She begins accusing me of lying to her because she knows that he is the real manager and that he can help her. Nope, dude just trying to shop. She ended up just leaving in a huff. So when I worked at Starbucks, we, as you can imagine, had plenty of shitty entitled people come in expecting the world of employees barely paid above minimum wage who've been awake since 3 AM or earlier. We had people blaming us for the fact that they were late for work and were going to be fired. People blaming us for being late picking up their kids. Kids blaming us for being late to school. Plenty of "but I ordered a venti, why did you give me a grand, or this coffee is cold because I've left it sitting out for an hour, but I want you to make me a new one for free, or you aren't being enthusiastic enough after 8 hours of being here and so sleep deprived you don't know what your name is." But probably the worst / funniest was Libby. Libby was a regular who we really wished wasn't. She was overly demanding and had one of those super complicated half-calf double soy triple whip, hold the cream half the sugar and do a backflip when you serve it to me types, and she could tell if you got her order wrong and would make you remake it until it was right. She also would steal from our tip jar right in front of our faces. She'd pretend to put a 5 in and then pull out 4 ones, but she'd take out 5 or 6 ones instead. And one time during this little switcheroo of hers, she accidentally dropped a $100 bill out of her wallet. The good thing about Libby was that she only came in once or twice a week, but that meant that we were the ones who had to find this $100 for her. She didn't notice it for a few hours afterwards, and when she did, she called in and asked for the manager and asked her if she'd seen it, since she would have dropped it out in the lobby, where we very rarely went since we were so busy in bot. We went out to check but found nothing, and told her that a customer must have taken it, and that we were sorry, but there was nothing we could do. She flipped her point sheet. That's my rent money. I'm going to be kicked out of my house. Do you want me to be homeless? You hate me and want me to be homeless, you shitty fakers. I hate you and you're terrible. Geo, fuck off and die. The supervisor came out and gave me the gist of what she'd said while begging me to find this money. There were also some racist accusations since the neighborhood this bucks was in was predominantly immigrants, and Libby was your standard white liberal until put under pressure anyway. So a week passes and still the money hasn't shown up. Libby calls us each day, multiple times a day, to find out if we've found her money. Sometimes she yells and screams, sometimes she doesn't. Either way, the answer's always the same: we hadn't found her money. So she comes in again and pretends like she hasn't been cussing us out for a week straight, is all happy and bubbly, and jokes about losing the money and how she's just so scatterbrained sometimes, haha. She tries to talk me into giving her free coffee since we lost her money, but I tell her that she has to pay anyway. She grumbles and opens up her wallet, pulls out her card, and out flutters a $100 bill and lands on the counter. We both look at it. She looks into her wallet and after a moment goes, "Oh, that's right. I hid that $100 in my credit card slot for safekeeping, so I wouldn't lose it. You can stop looking for my money now." That was it. No apologies for the abuse throughout the week, the accusations, anything. I know I shouldn't expect one, but damn. I think she realized that she faked up, though, because she didn't show back up for a couple of weeks. TLDR, she thought that we stole her money after she stole our money, later found her money in her wallet, safe and sound. I had a woman call to tell me that she spent too little on an ice cream cone. We had a special that was like 2 scoops in a waffle cone for $5, and for some reason she only got 1 scoop and said she didn't know about the special, despite there being signs all over the shop about it. She claimed that my worker didn't offer it to her. I didn't focus on upselling at our store, so this wasn't a big deal to me. I apologized to her, but I was also like, what exactly do you want me to do about it? This happened yesterday. I'm assuming you ate the ice cream, so you can't return it. She wanted a refund anyway for the inconvenience. I asked if she had a receipt. She said she didn't. I said no go without a receipt. She said she didn't get one at checkout. I explained to her that in my state we are not required by law to give a receipt for cash purchased food service items, so if she didn't ask for one, tough it is. She kept pressing, saying she demanded to speak to the manager. I explained that I was the manager. She then asked if there was another manager she could speak to. I told her no, I was end of the line, top of the heap. No one else was going to tell her anything different. She huffed and told me she would be by to discuss it in person. She never came in. This one is kind of a recurring problem. Fortunately, as a manager, I only have 2 people above me, the general manager and the owner. We have a woman that works for us, is the sweetest woman in the world, but she is a larger woman, older, 65, and comes from a farming and military background, so she is strong and stocky. Unfortunately, she is often mistaken for a transgender person, even though she is not. Not that we have a problem with that either. Anyway, multiple people have refused to do business with her based on her appearance. We do have booking fees at our establishment, and anyone who sets an appointment with her is subject to the cancellation fee if they cancel without notice. I have had her come out to greet clients, and as soon as they see her, say nope and turn around. Without getting into detail, our business has nothing to do with appearance. I then charge them a cancellation fee. Often, I get a call a few days later asking what the charge is. Myself, or my subordinates, say it is for cancelling service without proper notice. At least 4 to 5 times a year I get to hear some asshole try to stammer to me why he should get a refund. I always make them say it, as most of the time they try to dance around the issue. I had a last minute thing come up. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, but your personal life can't affect our business arrangement." She wasn't what I expected. "Oh, in what way?" You know. "No sir, I don't." Well. Cue lots of stammering. etc. "I will not give refunds for this. My boss won't, and my owner won't." If they really want to push chargebacks against us, they can, but we aren't about to let people do this. Had exactly this happen to me. Was managing a restaurant in Dublin, late 90s when the BSE crisis was running amok in the UK. Had a table of 6 or so apparently well off, late 20s/early 30 British guys ordering T-bones and ribeyes, and all well done, peasants. The good wine, the works. About halfway through eating their shoe leather, the waitress covering the table said she had a bad feeling about them. They were talking as if they were getting the food for free and wanted to check what the story was, so I made a point of regularly checking their table to make sure everything was okay. Come time to pay, and there's a big huddle at the table with lots of not very hushed, "You do it. No, it's your turn," etc. I catch the eye of our bouncer, "Maker, we might have some trouble here, call the guards." Look and head over. Turns out that despite clearing their plates, they weren't paying because the ribeyes had bits of fat in them, the steaks weren't cooked properly, the sauces were wrong, and despite dining in some of the best steak houses, this was the worst steaks they'd ever had, ever, blah blah blah. One faker even pipes up, "Yeah, and my steak, a T-bone, had a big bit of bone in the middle of it, that's not right," causing a ripple of titters to pass around the table. One of the guys even mentioned that he personally knew the owner of the restaurant, Mr., which was like saying he knew Ronald McDonald. I laughed in his face at that point anyway. I wasn't letting those smug fakers win, and flatly refused to let them off. And when they started getting offended and threatening to call the police, I told them that was a great idea, motioned for the bouncer to call the guards, but he nodded and held up 2 fingers. He's already called them, and they were 2 minutes away. Good man. So I stalled them a bit longer now, just to explain a wee bit. At this time, Temple Bar in Dublin was just kicking off as a big tourist attraction, and the Gardaí were patrolling heavily at the weekends, keeping a high profile. Being a good neighbor, I'd always chat to them, give them a cuppa if it was cold. Plus our bouncer knew a good few of them personally. Now it was time to get payback for those 37 cups of tea. Sure enough, a couple of guards turn up. I explain to them the situation, point out the waitress nearly crying from the sheet they'd given her, and they sidle up to the table. They explained that, here in Ireland, if they ate the food, they had to pay for it. That, or they were going to spend the rest of their trip in a prison cell. They argued a bit, and I could see the guards were looking forward to putting these smug pricks in their place, but in the end, they coughed up, and at the guards' gentle suggestion included a hefty tip. It's the small victories. 21-year-old female here, 19 at the time this happened. Worked at a popular quick service fast food chain. Was listening to one of my crew members interact with a customer in drive-thru. The customer was asking a lot of questions about prices on meals with/without drinks, but wasn't really listening and asking the same questions over and over. My crew member, I'll admit, definitely had a sassy attitude, but part of the reason I was listening in on them was because she was being so patient with this customer for once. At one point, my crew member accidentally said the wrong price. You know how often you jumble up words when you're speaking off the top of your head. The customer gets quiet, then says, "You know you're bullshitting me, right?" and proceeds to freak out over RDT speaker, asking to speak to me. I take over on the headset and try to explain to her that my crew member accidentally said the wrong word, that her meal without the drink would indeed be cheaper, etc. She wasn't having it. She cuts us off and comes to the window, still going off. She asks me, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I have zero idea what she means, so I ask her, "What do you mean?" We're obviously idiots, so she says, "I mean, what the hell is wrong with you?" Okay. It basically went on like that for a good 5 minutes. She was just accusing us of pretty much nothing, just yelling that we are liars and bullshitters and the like. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. After people behind her started honking, I think eventually I just gave her the meal for free to get her the heck out of there. Also pretty sure she asked for the corporate number, which I gladly gave her along with my name and our restaurant number. Try explaining whatever the fuck we did to her to corporate. The next customer that comes up to the window immediately goes, "Damn, that beach was crazy. Made the whole thing worth it." That's a tactic people do. They try to confuse the salesperson into saying the wrong price, so they can hold that against them, saying they have to honor the price quoted. Point: I had a guy do that over glasses and contacts, but I've been here for too long to mix up prices. He lied and claimed I said it was like $2 cheaper. I told him I didn't say that, and even if I did, I can't control his insurance. Same piece of sheet comes to pick up an order for a different family member that they called in. I go to ring him up, and he flips out because his insurance wasn't used. I tell him #1 we don't do insurance orders over the phone, and #2 if he had mentioned it was a phone order over the phone then we would have told him to come in, and #3 the system doesn't allow for us to put an insurance order in and label it as a phone order. You have to label it as a phone order, otherwise the contacts won't be shipped to us. If not, it has to be paid for through the register to trigger shipping, but obviously this isn't possible without the person being there in person. He lies and claims we said we would do it. I flat out told him he doesn't know what he's talking about and he needs to wait so I can fix it. He bitches about waiting. I yell to my coworkers that he doesn't know what he's talking about. When I ring him up, I tell him next time if he wants insurance he needs to come in person. I used to work at the concession stand / cafe at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. We had snacks like potato chips and candy, as well as pre-made sandwiches from a local sandwich shop. We only got a certain number of sandwiches for each day, so when we ran out, that was it. This one lady who was in a wheelchair came through my line, telling me how she was diabetic and needed to eat a meal. I showed her that we had trail mix, candy, and chips, but she absolutely could not eat any of that because she was diabetic. It had to be a sandwich and nothing else. I told her we literally didn't have any sandwiches left, but she just kept repeating about how she was diabetic and she was told there would be sandwiches. She was being incredibly rude to me, making a scene, and said I was told there would be sandwiches. Probably about 10 times. By this point there was a long line forming behind her while she was making a scene. She asked for the manager, so I told her she could step out of line and wait for the manager, but she wouldn't budge. The manager came over and told her the exact same thing that I had. She eventually calmed down, moved out of the line, and agreed to have chips and candy for free. I don't know who the fuck told her about the sandwiches, but I want to slap them. I was kind of the assistant manager at the retail store I worked at. We were relatively small and our actual manager bounced between our location and another one, so she wasn't around every day. If she wasn't around, or can I see the manager? Questions went to the employee who was there the longest and was acting manager. Most of the time, conflicts were easily resolved and we didn't need to call our actual manager. After a long time, employee quit and moved away. I was second in rank under my manager. I was the youngest person working at the store. I had just graduated high school and worked for the store for about a year. All the other employees had only been working for 4 months or less. We had a high turnover rate because mostly college students were hired, and it was the start of summer. It was one of our slow days, so it was just me and my middle-aged coworker working. Let's call her Jen. Jen was 25 plus years my senior, but this was her first retail job and just needed some extra cash on the weekends. We sold high-end products with specific warranties. I was on my break, so it was just Jen on the floor. Our manager was on vacation out of the country, so we could only reach her by Facebook. This angry woman comes in demanding a new pair of high-end sunglasses because the screw came undone on her pair, which made the glasses loose and inevitably popped the lens out. This happened while she was in a parking lot, so when the glass lens fell out, it shattered. Her 1-year warranty was up, so we could only offer her 20% or so off a new pair, or she could contact the manufacturer directly to see if there was a faulty part. We are always told of faulty parts and recalls, so she just didn't tighten her glasses when the screw was loose. She was not happy about her options, so she went off on poor Jen. Angry woman then asked to see the manager, who was me that day. When I came out and asked her what the problem was, she was fuming. She didn't believe that I was the manager. Granted, I do look young and I have a high voice. She called me a bunch of names and started going off on Jen again. She asked if Jen was the actual manager and only said I was to get out of the situation. I kept telling her the options we could offer, and she continued to scream. Finally she left, but not after throwing her $300 sunglasses on the ground as she walked out and left. They were definitely beyond repair now or warranty now. After, I Facebook messaged my manager who was on my side. She told me to clean up the glasses and throw all the parts in the trash. Funniest part is that the manufacturer only allows repairs if all the parts are there when sent in. Without the pair of glasses, she wouldn't even be able to get a replacement lens or screw. I quit after that summer and I never heard a complaint about the incident. I work in the admissions department at a zoo. We work closely with the membership department and are really friendly with each other. When people purchase membership they get a card that says their name, how many adults, how many children, if they are allowed to bring in guest, etc. The card says clearly that you must show it per card. Sometimes we are friendly or lazy and ask for one for the whole group. Well, a week ago some guy didn't have his ID. I don't know how he drove to the zoo, since you need a form of ID to drive. We told him that without an ID we can't let him in. The guy got mad and started screaming at us, saying random shit to us. He demanded to see a manager. Good thing our manager, for admission not membership, was on site. She explained to guy that without ID we can't let him go in, showed him on the card where it explains to show it. The guy screams at her and the know who paid the membership I should be allowed to go in without it. My manager responded no ID no entry. He asked her to see a manager. Her response was I'm the manager. He then asked if there was someone higher than her he can speak to. So she told him, if you want to do anything you have to speak with membership point. So he goes to membership and what they told us is he was being an asshole and screaming that he paid for it and blah blah blah. The manager for membership was called and because he screamed at him, they deny his entry to the zoo. Oh boy. Never thought I'd get to share this. The worst customer interaction I've ever so much as heard of. Point I was the manager at the time. In a hospitality setting. Point there were 3 of us on shift. One of my staff, let's call her Steph, had blue hair and piercings. Whilst I was handling the kitchen, cleaning up and cooking stuff, our job emphasized everyone being able to do every task. Her and the other staff member, a B, were serving customers at our front counter when an out-of-state family comes through and places a bunch of orders. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't there to hear it, but shortly after they had arrived, a B came back and told me that a bunch of customers had come through and harassed Steph for her appearance. I headed out front, told Steph to follow me to the back, and after she broke down explaining what happened, I gave her a free, paid break to just take it easy for a bit. I hopped out the front to have a chat with a B about how to handle that situation, namely, grab me so I can take over the transaction, and how we are going to break down the rest of the ARVO. If I decide to send Steph home it's at this point, Mum spots me having a discussion with her from across the food court and decides to approach us. Mum, it turns out, was the person in this family group responsible for giving my employee sheet. And oh boy, does she have views. From 5 feet away, she yells at me that what I'm doing is incredibly disrespectful to all of my customers, so loud that the 100 other patrons of the food court stop and stare from as far as 30 meters. I briefly tell her that I'm not being disrespectful to anyone and that I'm explaining to my colleague the plan for the rest of the afternoon. As a side note, it's obvious she's assumed that I'm bad-mouthing her in some way and presumably has made this assumption because the way she's acted so far has been below the standards I'd expect from human garbage. Mum, still yelling, tells me to get the manager. Now point I tell her that I'm the manager and would gladly address her questions if she has any, though I can reassure her there has been no disrespect to anyone so far, and could you please calm down and explain to me what the problem is, as my job is only to help. Point she calls bullshit and asks for my direct supervisor. I tell her the only person directly above me is the owner and that he's out of state at a conference. She asks for his supervisor and I tell her the only other person she could talk to above me would be the development manager for our state, who is also at the conference. Point at this point, she's realized that she's not getting hold of another set of ear above mine, so she launches on into a tirade, and I shit you not, word for word, I don't know how you retards do it down here, but I come from poverty stricken. suburb of national renown in the next city. I manage a store there, and up there the customer is always right and should always be respected. And that means, when I pay you, I get what I want and you do not get to say anything about me to anyone. I assured her I hadn't said a word about her, was confused about what she was alluding to, and could she please explain what caused this entire situation in the first place, as I now have a very nice young girl crying in the back of my store, and believe I may have to call security due to continued harassment of mall employees. At this, she pales and calls her sister over, and before she can arrive, I assure her that it would be in her best interests to detail any problem she has with my store to my head office in an incident report on our website. I then handed her a business card and told her as quietly as I could that due to their ongoing escalation of the issue, they were no longer welcome around my premises and I would be getting in contact with mall security to file an incident report and have them permanently barred from shopping at city name shopping center. At saying that, I can honestly say I have never seen two grown-as women run so fast in my life, and by the looks of it, I doubt they'd ever tried to either. Security later swung past, having caught them at one of the exits, and it turned out they'd been shoplifting from a number of boutique stores using their kid's stroller, with the kid still in it, and could I please give them a statement and security camera footage for the interaction. Some fucking people, man. TLDR, if you're going to break the law, don't go drawing attention to yourself like an entitled coolkid. At my shop we have a strict no return policy, unless it is manufacturer error of course. Basically if you break it, or have buyer's remorse you're shit out of luck. We have 3 signs in our store that say no returns or refunds, and on every receipt point this lady had buyer remorse because we bought something 3 days before and we put it on sale. She wanted to return it and then buy it back. I refused to do that because we do not need to have sales. She started flipping out, demanding, saying I'm too dumb to be a manager and for me to get the manager. I walked into the back office, waited 30 seconds, and walked back out and said, hi, I'm the manager today, how may I assist you? She then said she wanted to speak to the general manager. I repeated the process. She then asked to speak to the owners. I told her that the owners are silent owners and leave me in charge to do as I want. I make the decisions for everything. She insisted I should give her their cell phone numbers. When I refused to give them her number, she said, if you don't call them right now and give me that price, I'll write a review. I laughed and told her that's fine. Leave 1. I have 60 5-star reviews and 2 4-star reviews. That's it. 1 1-star is fine. I kind of had to deal with this by proxy, but just wow. I work for a pet service company. We offer a few free services to fancy apartment buildings in exchange for them marketing for us / having a foot in the door. We do dog walking, pet sitting, training, that sort of stuff. And one of the free services is a dog play group. Lots of our customers get walks and enjoy the free play group, but then there are some people who just get the free stuff, and that's fine. We expect that. But some people take the free stuff and also use a different dog walking / dog daycare company. It was play group day and this customer said she wanted her dog to come to the free service, but his regular walker was coming at noon, so we must have him back at noon. We took him to play and then made an effort to get the dog back right on time. And our employee saw his other walker come into the building, so she knew he was right there. So the dog was picked up in probably 3 to 7 minutes of being dropped off. Apparently our employee didn't know to crate this dog, so she didn't. The regular walker called the owner and said the dog wasn't crated, and the owner flipped, saying the dog could have died. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Unless this woman regularly leaves poison on her floor, the chances of that are 0. So in her fury she asks to be taken off our client list and wants nothing to do with us. But when the time comes a week or so later for another free service that she sees her neighbors getting, she's furious her dog didn't get one. Yeah, she was pissed she didn't get the services after she asked to be dropped from our client list. Just, ugh. The worst one I've had so far, I was at the customer service desk in the middle of the store to cover an employee so they could get a break. A lady came in with a mentally handicapped guy. He must have had torrents because he kept whooping. The lady got annoyed and told him stop. Of course, he couldn't help himself and kept on. So she started punching him in the head. I wasn't having that shit and told her she needs to leave now before I call police. She told me to shut up and mind my own business, then turned to leave. The employee I was covering returned just in time to miss everything that happened. This lady decided on the walk up that she was being treated unfairly and told the cashier up front to call the manager up because the girl at the counter was just so rude. So when I saw her standing up there, I didn't even greet her or ask the problem, just went straight to the phone and picked it up. Didn't dial or anything, just put it to my ear. She asked, "What are you doing? You need to come over here and help me." I ignored her some more and just said into the empty phone, "Yes, I need an officer to remove a customer causing a disturbance." Her eyes widened in disbelief and she waddled out of my store for good. Wasn't a manager for this, but have a story too good to not post here. In my days as a mall cop, I was in the Tim Hortons in the mall to grab a coffee before my shift. I had my earbuds in and wasn't paying much attention until I suddenly saw a lady going insane at the counter. I pulled my earbuds out and asked the person in front of me what was going on. She shrugged and said the lady just started yelling after the counter girl asked a question. The woman was yelling, "I want the manager. I want the owner. This is bullshit." I had my jacket on over my uniform and stepped over the line to get in front of the woman and ask what the problem was. In the middle of her yelling at a shift manager, she first told me to fuck off and stay out of it. I explained who I was and that she could leave if she didn't calm down and explain herself. She then tells me to fuck off again, at which point I tell her to leave or the police were going to be called. She then tells me the issue. Woman. She asked me if I wanted a hash brown with my bagel sandwich and coffee, and I think that's rude. I don't want that. Me. Long pause. What? Huh? You heard me. That's rude. I don't want the hash brown. Why is she asking me if I want it? Me. You realize that's part of her job and that literally all you have to do is say no, right? Huh? No. It's ignorant. It's harassment. I want to talk to the owner of this Tim Hortons. Me. Get out of here. Now. You're insane. She then yelled about how she'd never be treated like this in America. This was in Canada. And stormed off. The whole store thanked me for ending the rampage. I work the front desk at a hotel, and we only have one person working at a time. I'm technically the guy in charge, so I guess that makes me manager. I had a guy walk in and want a room. I told him the price, and he was like, okay, and got the room. About 15 minutes later, he comes back down in a fury. He starts yelling at me about how I charged him maximum price for a room. And he wanted to know why I did that. I told him that we only charge one price, that you can only get discounts if you have a AAA, AARP or Gov/military ID, which he had none of. He pulls out his phone and shows me that Expedia has the same room for $10 less, and he asks me why I didn't charge him that much. I try to tell him that we have a special deal with them. We get advertisement for our business and they make commission off each booking. He was having none of it. He then complained about the room and the quality of it, which is pretty nice, but we are only a 2-star hotel, so I don't know how much he was expecting. After I told him I was the one in charge at the moment, he wanted to speak to the owner. We called her up, and she told him the same thing. He was about ready to explode at this point. He stormed off and tried to pull the same sheet on the next employee working to see if he could get a discount. He paid a grand total of $68. There's a 3-star hotel down the road that has rooms for $110 a night. If he wanted a better hotel, TLDR, guy complains that Expedia had a room cheaper than the walk-in price and complains that I didn't charge him the Expedia price. A few below. I worked in customer service for 10 years. In the thousands of calls, it's hard to pick out just one. They kinda blur into levels of stupidity. Was offshore opening a site, working through the flood of "let me speak to your manager" / "I wanna speak to an American." About 60 to 80% of our calls were being pushed to this site. Chances are you gonna go offshore. Got a handoff from an agent. Customer had been calling and hanging up constantly for like the last 2 hours. Customer asks me if I'm American, to which I said yes. Starts explaining his issue, then for some reason asks where I'm located, to which I replied with my physical location, the offshore site. He hangs up and proceeds to do that for the next 3 days. A few calls an hour for the next 3 days. This guy dials, asks for a manager, gets me, then just hangs up. Over and over and over again. At the end of the 3 days he gives in, spends a few minutes yelling about how he's going to take his business elsewhere, then updates his address. This dude spent hours raging about something he could do online in seconds, never having to deal with anybody. As long as I could remember his account number to do the occasional check. Never actually changed companies. I can't even imagine the desire to waste that much of your time. Around the same time, got this military guy wanted to speak to a manager because the offshore employee couldn't possibly understand his issue adequately. There was a language barrier. His issue, he'd maximum the number of withdrawals he could get for free from his lend and expected us to do something about it. There was a fee he was balking about. We never saw it. It wasn't charged by us. It went to our intermediary company that all government payments go through. I think they had a limit of like 3 for free. After that there was a fee. Either way, not a fee we charged or could do anything about. Wanted to speak with someone in our company that could make that go away, like we would negotiate for him. Solly referred him back to his co or his senator, cause yeah, we are your bank, nothing else. Then there was the issue about us verifying info. He wanted to go round and round with this because his cable company would read out the number, his phone number, when asking to verify, whereas we did not. This guy legit wanted to argue about why our verification policies were different. I said we are 2 different companies. I'm assuming you're bundled, so you may or may not be calling from a location they get a lot more detail on. And lastly, is this really what you want to waste your day on? I get paid to talk to you. You are wasting your time. Or is 4 days coming from this place. Both of those stories above have way more details to add, but I CBF.